thank you for joining me on our blue sofa today.
It's a pleasure.
The French-German cooperation projects FCAS and MGCS have had some challenges and some delays. How can Europe's two largest nations develop successful binational defense projects?
Well, firstly, I would not comment on the everyday ups and downs of such big projects as FCAS and MGCS. I think in the case for every big significant project, even when it is managed only by one national state, then of course if you are two or three, it's more complex, but it's a life or complex program. More systematically, what I would like to say that firstly, it's very important that there would be a success. And it's an industrial question, and it's not only an industrial question. Everybody has spoken here, and it's absolutely vital that we need the capacity to be able to fight. Combatfähig, kriegsfähig. And for that, we must deliver on those key capabilities. I think what makes things difficult for such program is, of course, industries are competitive. Then they compete between themselves. And then what is important is that there is sufficient pressure and incentive to make sure that they conquer and that finally they go on and deliver the product in the appropriate time. That's why I think that the customer must be in the driving seat and then have constantly the possibility to exert the pressure on industry to deliver, again, what is required in due time. But for that, you need, it's a normal expectation on behalf of the industry to have certitude on the contract and to have a market also. Then you have your customer, your national customer, but on top of that, there are other member states of the European Union, of the Atlantic Alliance that can be customer. And then to make sure that we use a framework to develop such program that would enable the industry to know exactly where they are, and to know that they will have a market, an internal market in Europe, and also a kind of safety about their export conditions. And I think that was the public sphere must bring to such a program. And en contrepartie, to balance that, they have the power to say, well, we want you to conquer now and then and stop delaying your production because you are rivals, which is true for FCAS and MGCS. That is the first point I would like to make. The second one is that to do so, I think that it's the European Union provides an appropriate framework to support. And for the time being, there is a kind of common understanding that no, such big programs, it's difficult enough. Let's not have on top of that complex structures to deal with them, and let's do it by ourselves. France, Germany, Spain, or others. And of course, I was chief executive of the European Defence Agency. I worked very much with OCCAR in this position. And I really think that we have a proper framework to accumulate all the assets for success. Firstly, you have a European framework which allows you to have access to the incentives of the European Union, including money on the EU budget, but also research and technology incentives, regulatory incentives. And you have this plus. And you don't have the what could be some difficulties because in the European Defence Agency, if you are two member states, you can do it your way. You have specific programs and you do it. And it's not institutional. And there is no delay. You don't have to wait for the parliament, for the council to decide, or for the other member states to have a say. You just decide between the participants to the program. And there is something that is rather difficult to understand, that we have what we need. We should try to use it, but for significant programs. And I think these programs are significant. And one day we should check whether it would not make sense to do it that way, European way. And when I say European way, it's not in opposition to NATO, because as you very much know, then it is available for any kind of use, and particularly in a NATO framework.
Staying with the European way and Europe's actions, Russia fundamentally misjudged EU's ability to maintain a common policy. In your opinion, is the EU able to uphold its common approach?
I think, yes, as you said, we had a common policy. We have a common policy. And as you very rightly say, Russia misjudged. They despised the Europeans, and then they thought that they would do nothing. And it's a surprise. I think that is perhaps our mistake. We let the Russians think that we are weak. And that it's no use to speak with us. Just speak with the Americans, or just take action, invade, but not speak to the Europeans. And I think we have to come back with a possibility, with making our adversary today understand that it's worth counting with us as adversary today, because they acted as they acted. Then now what will be the challenge is to keep this common position, including if we are, to say the least, less aligned or less converging with the United States as we have been up to now. Then we don't know exactly what will be the next administration. The way Mr. Trump will act after what he said during the campaign. But what is important is to make sure that we keep our solidarity between Europeans and define what would be our line, because after all, it is our interest. It is very much a European question. We need our allies, not only the Americans, by the way, we need other big states in the world. It would make sense to speak with India, to speak with Brazil. You see, then I don't say it's only a European matter, but it's primarily a European matter, particularly if you consider that we have promised membership to Ukraine and even begun the negotiations with Ukraine. And what is really key is to have enough of a common position to make sure that we have a say as Europeans in what would be the situation after the combats. And when the combats cease, what is the solution and what is our say on the solution? And on that, we have to, I think, to think now between Europeans, because others have already some ideas. Then we should know what is our view of our interests between Europeans and Ukraine being a European state.
For our last question, Germany and Britain have committed to a closer cooperation within the field of defense technology and military operations. Could Germany and France tighten their bonds in a similar way, maybe even including Britain in this?
Alors, firstly, between Germany and France, we have everything we need as regard commitments. We have the Élysée Treaty, 60 years old, and we have recently signed 6 years ago the Aachen Treaty. And if you read it again, and we should remember what was written and was signed, we have much more commitment to act together in the field of defense and research and technology as any arrangement that could be. Then we just have to do it. We signed it. Our heads of government signed it, then do it. That will be the first answer to your question. Second, should we do it also with others? Oh, by the way, we did it around 10 years ago between France and the UK. It's the Lancaster House arrangements. I think we should do it together, German, French, with others. You mentioned Poland. I would say yes, definitely yes. But I would say also not only Poland. Some member states are very important in the European Union. Spain has an important defense industry. Italy, of course, and other. It's more specialized, but other member states play a very important role. Belgium, I was ambassador to Belgium, then I will mention Belgium, but it's a reality. And also our Nordic member states have a very important contribution to make. Then I really think that we should go on with this, implement what we sign. I'm sure that one day there will be something again between the Brits and the French, when governmentally we are ready on both sides. And do it at the same time, again, between Europeans. And I think that for the UK, what is really important is to have a proper governance in the EU. Same thing as my answer to your previous question. We need the proper governance to make sure that we are trusted to have such significant programs as FCAS and MGCS, but also to make sure that if we want to work with the UK, we can find a flexible way, which would not be the community approach, the Gemeinschaft, to work with the UK. And again, I think we have flexible ways to do so. When I was in the European Defence Agency, we had a relationship with Norway that was very fruitful. Not a member state. I don't say that it should be exactly the same with the UK, but to find, because they will want more, but to find a way to work with the UK on this question of defense and technology, again, bilaterally, but also at a European level, because we need the UK when we want to be a major player in the field of defense in Europe.
Thank you so much for being here today.
It was a pleasure.